A couple of Russian thugs enter a man's home and quietly take him away from his wife. The man is taken before Oleg Malenkov, the Russian mob boss, who asks that he open the safe in the room where they are standing. The safe is open, but it's empty. Malenkov calls his employer and informs him that there is nothing in the safe, but he will leave something else. Malenkov shoots the man dead. Brian Mills buys a large panda bear for his daughter Kim's birthday. Kim examines a pregnancy test at home with concern. Brian arrives with the panda, followed by Kim's boyfriend Jamie. Kim comments that Brian is predictable, and Jamie agrees that Kim is as well, because she follows the same routine and goes to the convenience store to obtain the exact same orange smoothie drink from the exact same location. Brian departs with the panda, despite Kim's admission that she feels awful about not wanting it. Brian calls his ex-wife Lenor after he departs and tells her about Kim. He invites her to dinner, but she declines. Lenny surprises Brian by coming up at his house while he is preparing dinner. She tells him she's unhappy at home with her husband Stuart. She makes a move on Brian by kissing him. However, he recognizes that this would be wrong, and he respectfully declines Lenny's approaches. Brian receives a phone call from Kim while playing golf with his friends, and she invites him to meet her in a diner. She's ready to tell him about her pregnancy when they notice a bratty child making a fuss at another table. Kim becomes concerned and tells Brian she wants his advice on whether or not to get a puppy. Brian is visited by Stuart, believing that in order for his marriage with Lenny to work, Brian must leave the picture and stop seeing her socially. Brian assures Stuart that they are just friends and that there is nothing going on between them. Brian receives a text from Lenny, inviting him to meet her at his flat for bagels. Brian grabs the bagels and returns to discover a knife on the floor. He enters the bedroom and discovers Lenore lying dead on the bed, her throat slashed. As Brian recoils in panic, two police officers enter with guns pointing at him. They're about to handcuff him, but Brian cuffs both of them instead. He leaps out the window when he hears more cops approaching. They pursue him through the streets until he enters a garage and escapes down a hatch door into the river and out to the basin. Brian contacts Kim from a payphone while she is at Lenny's house looking for a sweater. He informs Kim about her mother's murder and that he is now being framed. He tells her to be safe and that he will protect her. Kim screams in shock and sits down to cry. Inspector Frank Dotzler is following Brian's trail. He and his men investigate the crime scene and go to Stuart and Lenny's house. Stuart returns immediately from a business trip. He is brought in to identify Lenny's body in the mortuary. He breaks down and tells Dotzler about Brian's background. Brian sneaks into the mortuary and discovers Lenny's body. He solemnly touches her face and takes a hair sample. The cops investigate the parking garage where Lenny left her car. Brian scans the car's GPS and discovers that Lenny traveled to the petrol station before she died. He visits the petrol station and slips into the security room to play a video. He sees CCTV of a masked man grabbing Lenny and throwing her into a van. One of the men has a star-shaped tattoo on his hand. Two detectives stop at the same petrol station and discover that Brian was present. They locate him in the security room and arrest him. Brian enters gently. The detectives inform Dotzler of Brian's arrest, but Dotzler knows Brian is setting them up since he has recently investigated Brian's background. Brian discreetly uncuffs himself and knocks out one cop while pushing the other to continue driving. The detectives pursue Brian as he seizes control of the cruiser. This leads them through a garage, where the cruiser eventually falls down a lift shaft. The automobile explodes, but Brian manages to escape. Dotzler calls Brian and instructs him to stand down since everyone will be looking for him. Brian answers with "good luck." Brian goes to see his friend Sam, to whom he delivered the sample, and informs him of what happened to Lenore. Sam supports Brian and is prepared to assist him. He tells Sam he wants to attend the burial. Everyone attends Lenore's funeral and consoles Kim and Stuart. Sam goes over to Kim and tells her to stick to her predictable schedule. He points to the button on his lapel, which conceals a hidden camera. Kim knows her father is watching, and she smiles. Kim leaves Stuart's home when she notices that he has too many guards. One detective follows Kim to the convenience store for her smoothie drink. She finds the one she loves and discovers a message on it that says, "Drink me now." She drinks it all at once. She then goes to school and feels uncomfortable in class. When she goes to the toilet, Brian pulls her into a bathroom. They embrace, and he offers her a serum to counteract the unpleasant effects of the cocktail he made. Kim opens up about her pregnancy. With limited time, Brian assures Kim that he will find the true criminals before the cops arrive. Brian had already left by then. Some Russian thugs pursue Brian as he drives away. They run him off the road, causing his car to blow up. One goon says he's going to get drunk. Brian persuades a man to allow him drive his car to follow the goons to the liquor store. Brian beats the thugs all over the store until they are all knocked out, except for one man, the one with the tattoo on his hand. Brian takes him down and forces him to reveal who sent him. The man says he'd rather die than tell, so he takes Brian's gun, places it in his mouth, and pulls the trigger. Brian locates Stewart, who now lives to a beach house. He knows Stewart sent the thugs, so Brian takes Stewart to another location and waterboards him for information. Stewart was involved in a disastrous business arrangement with Oleg Malenkov, and Lenny became a victim after Stewart failed to repay the man's money. He was simply counting on Brian to learn about the circumstance and use his murdering abilities to solve the problem. Stewart also informs Brian that Malenkov is a trained killer who joined the army and special forces and is just as skilled at murdering as Brian. Stewart, together with Kim, Sam, and Brian's other friends, arranges a meeting with Malenkov. Malenkov sets up a meeting in a downtown building. Brian finds an opening and runs through the building, beating up and killing all of Malenkov's goons before reaching the man himself in his flat. The two battle, with Malenkov nearly shooting Brian before Brian snatches the gun and shoots him twice. Brian approaches Malenkov to make the final shot, but Malenkov states they were both played by the same man, Stewart. Brian allows Malenkov to die slowly. Kim notices some texts from Lenor's phone in Sam's van about going to a specific area. She texts Brian and then attempts to call him via his headset. Stewart realizes what's going on, so he grabs Kim and shoots Sam in the neck. Stewart flees alongside Kim. The cops locate Sam in the van, unconscious but alive. Brian realizes Kim is in danger and hijacks a car to pursue her and Stewart. He follows her location and notices she's heading for the airport. The cops track and follow Brian. Stewart prepares his private plane for his and Kim's departure at the airport. The pilots begin to guide the plane off the runway when Brian drives over swiftly and plows through the wheels, bringing the plane down. Stewart appears from the plane, holding Kim at gunpoint. She escapes, leaving him to Brian. Brian explains how Stewart attempted to get away with Lenor's murder by beating the men senseless. Before Brian can kill Stewart, they hear police sirens approaching. Stewart believes Brian can't kill him right now, and when Brian tries to show him wrong, he turns to Kim, who shakes her head and tells him not to. Brian believes Stewart will get qualified lawyer and be released from jail in a few years, at which point Brian will take him. He knocks Stewart down and then leaves him to be arrested. Brian meets with Dotzler at his office. Dotzler claims he knew Brian was innocent because he found the bagels in his apartment when they were still warm. According to that logic, he couldn't have bought bagels and then committed murder. They split up, and Dotzler closes Brian's files. Brian joined Kim and Jamie on the dock. He supports the two of them as they prepare to have a kid. Kim said that if it is a girl, she will be named after Lenor. Brian agrees with that decision.